Coming up next, Rob is going to have a conversation with Erica Schmidt and Jed Hartman. Please welcome Rob to the stage.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Kat. And thank you, Michael. You know, what a great way to start the show. A really good. Sorry, I had an echo. Sorry about that. That was on my end. So let me welcome first Erica Schmidt, who is the global CEO of Matterkind, and Jed Hartman, who is the president of Channel Factory. Please join me up here. And first, before we get into it, you know, of course, I want to thank Jed personally, who from Channel Factory, who is our title partner at this year's summit. We couldn't do it without you, Channel Factory, and the whole team. So thank you so much for really helping to make this an important show for everybody. Thank you, Jed, and thank you, Channel Factory. And with that, you know, both of you on this beautiful morning, I want to ask you just to kind of warm up. Please introduce yourselves and maybe just tell us something about yourselves that the folks in the audience don't know about you. Erica, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for having me, Rob, and thank you, Jed and Channel Factory, obviously, for supporting such a phenomenal and important event for our industry. My name is Erica Schmidt. I am the global CEO of Matterkind. We just celebrated our 1-year Matterversary as we launched our business last year, and we're going gangbusters, and certainly excited to talk about some of our perspectives as it relates to the topic at hand today. But Rob did stump us this morning and said he wanted us to do a little bit of an icebreaker with a little known fact about ourselves. So what I will share is, you can certainly Google me, but I actually never thought that I would get into this industry. I studied classical archaeology and ancient history for my college degree with a minor in Latin. So my liberal arts education has done me well in this industry, but certainly a different path than most people may expect.
Got it. Thank you. Jed, please.
Sure. Jed Hartman. I'm the president of Channel Factory Americas. We are a tech and service company that specializes in brand suitability, contextual targeting, performance, and we focus on YouTube. And my little known fact, so I'm a hobbyist, and it means I do a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean I'm particularly good at any of it, but I do a lot of stuff. And one of my favorites is that I compete in national barbecue competitions.
Wow.
In the City Barbecue Society is where I compete, or the Steak Cook-Off Association. So there you have it.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. And Erica, the liberal art. First of all, congratulations on the 1-year Matterversary. Pretty cool. And liberal arts. I think, you know, some of the conversations we get into today, you know, will pull on that. So pretty neat. You know, for my kind of fun fact, probably a lot of people know, is I'm a pretty avid gardener, but the fun fact of this year is I decided to plant my squash and zucchini in front of the house instead of in the back of the house, just to see. Maybe the deer is going to eat it, maybe not, or maybe I'm going to have a gigantic wild patch of yellow and green veggies in front of the house this year. You know, just for fun. Anyway, we're you know, for this session, I want to make sure that we stay a little more philosophical. Right. It's important, I think, as we set the tone for the day. So, you know, the question that we're talking about is conscious advertising and advertising with a purpose. And I'm just going to start off with, you know, what does conscious advertising mean to both of you as you think about the term? And anyone can jump in, and we can also ask me questions too. You know,
Please, Eric, after you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was actually putting my hand out to allow you to go first this time, Jed.
Okay. Thank you. So, you know, conscious can mean different things to different people. But I think to properly answer it, if you look back at the recent history of digital advertising and some unintended consequences of various tactics and tools and strategies. So what I mean by that is chasing impressions, selling and buying impressions at scale created a viewability issue. And then with publishers adjusting to try to find more impressions and to impact consumers and compete with TV and drive CPMs, well, that created an ad blocking issue, right? As you put all sorts of stuff on your website. And then recently, the just targeting of audiences without contextual consideration created a brand safety and brand suitability issue. And then to solve that, ad tech companies over blocking of certain terms and phrases had the unintended consequence of over blocking certain creators, and many of them in minority segments. And focusing just on audience without contextual consideration can monetize not only really positive, good content and creators that contribute to society, but also that are perhaps negative or mindless or even toxic. So even though I compared it to the ad blocking and the viewability issues, the stakes are higher here because we're talking about the livelihood and monetization of creators and demonetization in minority segments. And we're talking about populating many, many channels with content that could be negative or toxic. And this is how our kids and grandkids, and certainly my family, my 11-year-old, get a lot of their content. So the stakes are higher. It's all very fixable, but it's important to bring this up when thinking about being conscious about what your advertising is. Do you know which creators you are monetizing when you run ads? And it's challenging. It's nobody's fault necessarily, because it is challenging. However, we realize this, and Channel Factory has a solution, and also it has a suggestion for the industry. But before I get into that, I want to send it back to Rob and Erica.
Erica, what does it mean? What does it mean to you, advertising with a conscience, and what do you think about when you say that, when you think about that term?
Yeah, I mean, it's firstly, I think Jed has expressed it exceptionally well, and certainly a hard act to follow. And for us and for me, I think we are really at the time of reckoning. And the reason that I say that is to Jed's point around the way that targeting and the way that the industry has gone for the greater part of decades has really been on the basis and what we've done and particularly those things with automation and tech driven is we've lent our hands to the algorithms to make the decisions, when really, to me, conscious advertising is putting that human lens on what we do and being exceptionally mindful in the way in which we approach our practices at the behest of our clients, but most importantly, that which is going to deliver the best experience for consumers. And we know that intrinsically with the leveraging not only of automation, but with data, we need to be exceptionally mindful of the data which we are leveraging for targeting purposes. And that comes under many different facets, right? It'd be from the perspective of, was the data that we are leveraging collected in an ethical manner? Does it have power and veracity, or has it been captured when consumers may not have the awareness of how that data may be handled? And we know that obviously with the deprecation of third-party cookies and changes in iOS, that it's more and more at the fore of consumer mindset about how their data is being utilized. But it also comes with intrinsic bias. And we are trying to ensure that when we are targeting, that we are really thinking consciously about, is this an ethical use of data, and are we targeting people in a meaningful fashion, or are we inherently biased in our approach and missing important underrepresented groups when we're targeting? And then I think it's also about, to Jed's point around chasing around the last click or the last impression, we feel that has created a poor user experience, right? And that is why people have blocked ads and why people skip ads whenever they can. And we think with the conscious approach and the ethical curation and utilization of data, we can give more rewarding consumer experiences, which leads to better outcomes for our clients.
Mm-hmm. I want to parse a couple terms. Because there's being conscious about where we're placing our ads, and then being conscious about the message in the consumer and what they're receiving. So I think you guys have touched on, being conscious of what we do. when I think about being conscious of the message and the consumer, is that more about, is that maybe a different term, purpose-driven advertising? Is that different? Do you think about that differently? Am I correct in parsing it? Because I think that we should also think about all of it.
Yeah, I think it really, Erica was broader than I in her definition, and she's right. It's all it. And as are you, Rob. I think all of this is just the idea of consciousness that the technology and digital world moves so fast. Like, we can't believe how young this is and how many companies have risen to stardom and then bombed. Like, it's like dog years, I think, in digital. You got it's like we've been around for 150 years, but we really haven't. And so we move fast, break stuff, right? And I think it's just making sure we step back and perhaps ready, aim, fire. And because the unintended consequences, whether it's consumer privacy, whether it's ad blocking, whether it's demonetization of minority segments, which is real, whether it's having the same ad message to different segments that may not look at it the same way, speaking to the right segments, all of that is conscious, and many more. That's the way we look at it. But I certainly there's many different ways to look at it. But I think I agree with you, Rob, that it's a broad topic. We tend to focus because our company does certain things, we're responsible for certain things. We tend to focus on what we do, but certainly what you're saying makes a lot of sense. That is broader than that.
So let's talk about them with a purpose. Let's talk about purpose-driven or cause-driven advertising. Talk about some clients that are doing it right. Talk about some clients or brands out there who may have missed the mark. Let's talk about, advertising with a purpose and what's going on in today's marketplace. Do you guys have any examples of brands who are doing things the right way?
It's a compelling question, and certainly I don't want to name and shame anyone, but I think purpose driven is inherently part to me of conscious marketing. And the notion is, and we know that there's a preponderance of consumers who expect brands to stand up with a higher purpose than just the sole notion of making money, right? And it was just last night where I was watching the perpetuation of the opioid crisis and the documentary on HBO Max. I'm not plugging HBO Max, by the way, but I'm just thinking about the messaging being this is to alleviate the pain of millions of Americans, when really there's a whole other crisis as a side effect of that, which makes it then, I think ultimately to the end consumer a little bit, feeling like that's disingenuous advertising, because hold on a second, you may be benefiting people with pain, but when you're over prescribing, and we know that the industry is certainly fraught with conspiracy, it's a challenging pill to swallow, pardon the pun. But I think it's also, you do see a tremendous amount of brands now where they are getting the pressure to make sure that not just their positioning and the way that they market to consumers, but their positioning in and of themselves is in alignment, right? And we know that, and I think that's why I also mentioned earlier, the age of reckoning is upon us, in the sense that there is a higher standard which a big base of consumers in this country in particular have an expectation on with brands that they align with. And we saw it with the Georgia voting rights, right? Or the lack of Georgia voting rights, and a big push for brands like Coca-Cola and Delta and Home Depot, all home based in Atlanta, to really stand up and say something about what's going on. And I think that that's exceptionally challenging for a lot of these companies. But we know that when you feel that higher purpose, you feel a greater affiliation towards a brand, and then are hence more likely to vote with your pocket towards those brands.
Jed, you were going to jump in.
No, I agree with Erica, and certainly the Georgia voting rights shined a light on a lot of companies who took risk. I think it's very challenging for huge brands in a polarizing world where they sell to all sorts of different types of people to tackle this. And I see the challenge. I'm going to age myself, but Benetton, right? They were one of the early brands to come out and really demonstrate diverse diversity in their creative. Colin Kaepernick, Nike, talk about risk. He virtually shunned from football, and Nike creates, incredibly compelling ads and a storyline around Colin Kaepernick. So I think I'm personally drawn to the risk, even though I understand many of these topics are risks for big brands, but those stick out in my mind.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, there's definitely examples, right? I mean, we talk about the ad showing up in the wrong place, but and that's are obvious examples that we deal with. But we just recently did a study that said, asking respondents if they would not buy a brand's product if they were misaligned with their social or political views, and almost 60% of the consumers surveyed said they wouldn't. Right. So forget, we spend a lot of time worrying about ad placement and we have to start to think about the brands and what they represent and kind of bringing that message through as well. I don't hear a lot about that. So it's good that we're starting to have the conversation, but I think it's important for people to start to think about, how do we educate our customers that this is an important topic? And so I put it to both of you, question, where are your clients? Like, are they embracing this? Like, Jed, hats off that you guys are pulling this forward, Erica as well. But, what are your clients saying? Are they leaning in? Do they accept this? As a concept, are they saying, well, we're not there yet? Like, where's the mood? And just in generally, obviously not specific.
I think it's all over the shop, really, in the way that, and certainly clients are thinking about it. And I think about, I look at last year, right, or the greater part of the past 15 months in the journey that most of the world has been on in regards to dealing and coping with a global pandemic, and then of course, the age of reckoning as it pertains to Black Lives Matter and everything that's going, and importantly, the conversations that are going on there, to AAPI and what's happening to the AAPI community finally coming to the fore and saying we've been mistreated as well. I think, we all saw those brand messages pivot really quickly last year, and we're all in it together, right? And, and I remember having this joke, it was like, we're all in it together, buy a X car or buy this, right? There's still that call to action. But I think what we saw also is a lot of brands saying, okay, we want to be part of the solution, and being articulate about how they are contributing to the crisis at hand. But it is exceptionally challenging, right? Because when brands start showing those what are deemed or noted as political affiliations, and certainly, we only just went through a pretty seminal and important election, but also extremely polarized. And I think brands are fearful, especially those that have a history of being conservative, around how to approach it. But then also, whenever we're working and pitching clients or being responsive to their changing needs, they often ask, okay, it's not just about talking about what you do from a diversity perspective. It's show us the realization of that, and that it's an obligation that we have as partners to our clients to be representative of the population and to be representative of underrepresented groups, in particular, Black professionals. And I think that is what is affecting change, and not to get, I've already probably gone more political than necessary, but I think that's, there's those that want to push and be provocative, and we saw that with Colin Kaepernick, but I think there's also plenty of brands out there that are saying, I know I need to do something, but I'm not quite sure how to navigate this.
No, thank you, Erica, thank you. And Jed, I'll give you a second. I think it's really important for our audience to understand the planning process. Right. So, you both of you in leadership are sharing this with your clients. Some of your clients are there, some of your clients aren't, but they're saying, show us. Right. And so the planning process, from the pitch to the media planning to that, if I'm a brand who's aware, I want to be purposeful, I want to be conscious, are they looking at, down to the technology company and the placement to make sure that every bit of the chain is also, kind of has some of the same forward thinking that my brand does? Like, are they going that deep today? Like, is that, and I don't know. So, how is that happening in the pitch room?
So I've been heartened by the awareness and the word we're using today, consciousness of the agency partners and brand partners I've been speaking with recently. It is top of mind, and it is most of my conversations during the day. Channel Factory has launched something we're calling the Conscious Project, and it follows almost a similar playbook. When I was at the Washington Post during the ad blocking issues, we first looked internal, fixed our own issues, and then we asked the industry to do the same. Not dissimilar, the Conscious Project, we are looking at our own block lists that we're creating to ensure they're not unfairly blocking these minority communities, LGBTQ plus, Black communities, Asian, Latinx, any minority communities. And it's easy to have happen. So we're replacing blocking with responsible blocking. And then if we create an inclusion list, right, of target content for an advertiser, are your inclusion lists inclusive? For the most part, no. The industry doesn't create inclusive inclusion lists. How ironic, but you can. So with responsible blocking, and it's gonna be a lot of investment and a lot of man and woman power, because the tech is always there, but you have to do it. And then shining a light on positive creators of content who contribute to society and not necessarily toxic, mindless, negative. And that way, you're actually helping, in the big picture, society. You're monetizing people who create better content for the future, and you're ensuring fair monetization of minority segments equal to none. And so that is the Conscious Project. It's a lot of work. We've been working on it for months, a lot of investment and resources that is wonderfully well spent at Channel Factory. And I think it's a great idea that the industry does this too, and looks at their block lists and ensures they're responsible block lists, and looks at their inclusion lists and ensures they're inclusive, and ensures that when there are audience targeting, do they know which creators they're monetizing and giving money to? And that is important. And that's the Conscious Project. So I think this has been my conversation over the last week or two. And we're a minority-owned company, so it's very my founder and owner Tony Chen is passionate about this, and I again heartened by agencies and brands really leaning in and making us better. They're challenging us with questions and comments, and really leaning into the topic.
So Erica, it's kind of from the other side. Tell me about like instructions to the teams, like how deep, Jed, congratulations for what you guys are doing, but one of many companies in the space. But just talk about instructions to your teams when you're having meetings with whether it's publishers or technology businesses. How deep are you asking them to make commitments and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I love what Jed said about what he's doing with the Conscious Project. We have a similar imperative that we're doing in regards to marketplaces and publishers to ensure that we are enabling and pushing and advocating for our client messaging to be placed on Black-owned, BIPOC-owned properties. And we're really proud of what we've done so far. We haven't been loud and proud about it, but certainly proud of what we've done. And now we've set an additional gauntlet down for ourselves to ensure that this is a necessary element of every engagement that we have on behalf of our advertisers, and make it a assumed opt-in on behalf of our advertisers. But when it comes to, we have a whole imperative around digital responsibility, and that runs the gamut and the spectrum from the data that we leverage and data partnerships to our platforms, obviously looking at what we do from an allow and a block list perspective. And then finally, when we're doing the analytics, that we're pressure testing and ensuring that what we've set up and what we've done is in alignment with our values and our parameters around conscious marketing. And it's a difficult conversation, right? Mm-hmm. So, we've all, we've all gotten used to doing things, and so have our advertisers, a certain way, and also that they get used to a certain set of results at a certain threshold of cost, right? And
yeah, so I'm gonna cut you off for a second.
Changes.
So it's a hard conversation. What's missing? what's missing? Like what's the hard part of it? Like where, it's
really about putting your money where your mouth is. That's the hardest element of the conversation. Everyone wants to do it and knows logically that it is the right thing to do and that they should be pursuing it. And that is, and here's the phenomenal thing, and I have to always give kudos to my team because I'm exceptionally proud, and I think that's incumbent as a leader is to give them credit. But, I see it, they hold us to those high standards. They set those expectations and they operate that way in everything that they absolutely do. But when it comes down to it, we are still evaluated, especially because we put a unique focus and an imperative on ourselves as Matterkind. And part of the reason why we do have our new identity is to hold ourselves up to those standards and to deliver results for the clients. But, when you are doing the right things, it's not always the cheapest thing. And we've all gotten addicted to cheap instead of about value.
Yeah. Erica, you and I have done too many of these sessions on value. I was going to try and stay away from that, but
sorry,
but
at least we can say transparency. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we go. It always ends up, but it is where the rubber meets the road, right? And because again, kind of the why are we doing this, right? Interesting stat. I was doing a different presentation, and today, the approximate global advertising spend number is about $389 billion with a B, 389. And there was a study on valueofadvertising.com that the PwC did that approximately the GDP value is 7x ad spend, approximately. So that would be 2.7 trillion. So our business represents $2.7 trillion in GDP, according to that study, approximately estimated, which is essentially larger than the GDP of pretty much every country except the top four. So why this matters, because we affect, right? We affect, but at the same time, as you're starting to think about the cost of doing it, right? That's the rub, right? The rub is I want to be conscious, I want to be purposeful, I want to do this right, but do I necessarily want to pay for it? It sounds like we keep getting that same problem, which is I want to do that. Can I do it for the right price? Is that still where we're sitting today?
I think we are progressing. I don't think it's as sad of a state of affairs as it has been, but it still is definitely still a prevailing headwind. But I think the more that we pressure test this and keep this top of mind, and not just top of mind, but top of action, that will continue to provoke the change.
Yeah.
And brands will win in the long run. They will make money. It seems perhaps like a higher CPV looking, under a microscope right now, maybe not, but the brands that do this right will win. So it is important. But Erica, I completely agree with everything you said about it's hard not to chase the last click, or and things we're accustomed to, rather than look at the big picture. But I'm seeing many more brands and agencies doing it now.
Well, that's a great place to wrap. I think as we think about this from the perspective of help, the reason we're doing these sessions, so I thank you both. The reason we're doing these sessions is to educate people that there's a method to the madness. There's a reason that we're doing it. And so, hats off to both of you for fighting the fight. And obviously if a client's saying, well, that's too expensive, I think that we know why. Right? We know why. And I think that's the education that we're all looking to deliver, of why the effort that we're putting here, in some cases, costs a couple bucks, but there's a reason to do it. Any closing thoughts to either of you, as we wrap up the day, or wrap up the session?
Erica?
Just thank you for the time, and for, as always, Rob, a brilliant conversation curated by your good self.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Rob. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone who tuned in, and everyone is invited over for a barbecue this weekend if you want.
Can't wait, Jed.
You bring the squash, Rob.
I will in the summer. Absolutely. Yeah. You got it, Jed. Thanks. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.